mute. So today we're talking about GitOps. This is a relatively new term in the grand scope of terms. We throw around a lot of different kind of jargon around here: Agile and DevOps, Cloud Native, DevSecOps. So GitOps is, in the grand scope of these terms, is a newer or relatively newer term, and it emerged out of the Cloud Native community. And so I want to talk a little bit about what GitOps is, point to some of the resources that we have developed and have links to and that we are developing as we build a go-to-market model around this, and then just kind of open it up for Q&A. So the general notion here is that GitOps is one of our 8 go-to-market use cases. So when we say a go-to-market use case, we're talking about a reason why a business or an organization will buy GitLab. So this is usually something that attracts a budget, is something a problem the customer needs to solve for. And we try to articulate that in the terms of the customer. So as an example, customers tend to need version control. So one of our use cases is version control. Customers tend to need CI/CD. So one of our use cases is CI/CD. And in this case, one of our customers' needs is GitOps. Now, because it's a new term, the customer may or may not use that language, but it is a problem that they need to solve for. So let me dive in to share some of our resources, and hopefully it will become a little bit more clear what GitOps is. So the first thing I just want to point to is the single source of truth that you need is the use case go-to-market page. This page is your sales resource that is the landing off point for all of the other resources. So everything else I'm showing today is linked on this page. And this is your one-stop shop. So if you only have one URL, this is the one to go to, and it's linked in our notes today. So this slide deck is linked on the page. And the thing that I just want to point out is, at a high level, you can think of GitOps as doing DevOps for your infrastructure environments, right? Or your infrastructure automation. So really, one of the images I like to show is this is an image of the GitLab flow. For example, if you're doing application development, you create an issue, you create a merge request, you commit your changes, you run CI, etc. Well, this is the same flow that can be done for your infrastructure and your environment. So these are things like, provisioning virtual machines or deploying containers on your cluster. Or it could, I like to make this broader than even just infrastructure. I like to talk about environments generally, because this could be provisioning your access policies. Your policy as code, not just infrastructure as code. This could be provisioning network configuration, right? So if you think of a tool like Terraform or AWS CloudFormation, these types of provisioning tools that provision entire environments, things like the firewalls in addition to the virtual machines, that entire environment as code, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about GitOps. So your customers and your prospects, they may or may not use the term GitOps. Like I said, GitOps is very, very new. So the likelihood of them actually using that term is actually pretty small today. They're far more likely to talk about terms such as infrastructure as code. They'll likely say, oh, we want to do infrastructure as code, is probably the biggest one. They will probably also talk about using tools like Terraform or Ansible, Chef, or Puppet. So similarly, if you heard me talk about cloud native application development, which is another GitLab use case, and I say your customers may or may not actually use the term cloud native. They may not come to you and say, like, I have a cloud native application development problem. Can you help me solve it? But they are likely to say, I want to do things like adopt Kubernetes, right? So I want to adopt Kubernetes, or I want to adopt microservices, or I want to containerize my workloads. All of those things are code words for the dev side of the house that they want to adopt cloud native application development, and they may in fact use the word cloud native. Similarly, if they say we want to do infrastructure as code, or we want to use GitLab together with Ansible or Terraform, that's what they're really talking about doing GitOps. It's kind of at the high level. One thing I'll say about how we at GitLab view GitOps, we have our own unique take, and because it is a new term, it's kind of like DevOps, right? If you ask 10 DevOps practitioners to define DevOps, you're gonna get 10 different definitions. So many tech terms are like that. GitOps is no exclusion to that. So everyone in the industry is defining a little bit differently. The phrase was coined actually by a company called Weaveworks, which emerged out of the cloud native market. So GitOps is very closely related to cloud native because it started in that community. But we look at it more broadly. We just say like any type of infrastructure provisioning, whether you're doing microservices or not, whether you're doing Kubernetes or not, if you're doing infrastructure as code, and you want to automate that, that's really GitOps. So we kind of take a broader view. And one of the focuses, obviously, as GitLab, our take on it is that the merge request is a really core component. So if you talk to a company like, so for example, yesterday we had a really amazing panel. Brendan O'Leary and I together did a panel webinar with the CTO of Weaveworks, the CTO of HashiCorp, and the principal product manager for Ansible. It had a really great discussion about GitOps, about the market, about infrastructure automation. And so everybody kind of had their own take. So, Weaveworks, they focus a lot on CD. Their main tool, Flux, is a CD tool. So when they talk about GitOps, it's 90% of what they're talking about is continuous delivery and what they call continuous operations. That's their big focus, because that's what their tool does. And they talk a little bit about Git. It's a part of it, but they talk more about those components. For us, obviously, as a single application, a complete DevOps platform in a single application, we take them more broadly. Yes, we talk about the infrastructure. Yes, we talk about the CI/CD. But we also talk about the merge request because our version control and collaboration tool is so powerful, and that this is the core of our product that is really a beautiful product. And so the idea here is when you're using merge requests to initiate changes into your production environment, all of a sudden now you can unleash a lot of regulatory compliance, internal compliance. It gets built in, right? So just imagine this example came up on the webinar yesterday. I thought it was a really great example. Imagine you are a software company and you are building algorithms for the stock market, right? So you have a market algorithm, and you want to update that algorithm inside of your production environment. Ideally, you have very, very few people that have the actual access and ability to deploy that change, right? You want to have that very, very tightly locked down, because the wrong thing deployed to production can be catastrophic. So you don't want a ton of people to have production access. You want to have a small group of codified and certified release engineers that can push that button. But you don't want to lock down your contribution, right? Increasingly, as not only applications become distributed, like let's say you're doing microservices instead of just a monolithic application, now you have a distributed application. Similarly, our teams are becoming distributed, especially in the current age where everyone is working remote now, just like GitLab, and now teams are distributed. So more than ever, software development teams are working on distributed applications where they themselves are in different locations and are distributed. So in that environment, if you want to do collaboration, moving your policy and your infrastructure, your network configuration, these things, moving them into code and using GitLab, now all of a sudden you can collaborate with people all over the globe asynchronously. And so with this kind of merge request model, you can have anybody can propose a change to, let's say, this algorithm for the stock market. Anybody can propose a change, so you have broad collaboration, but few people actually have the ability to merge that change, and that's where you get your compliance. So there's a lot of benefits. I could talk about this all day long. Anybody who wants to talk more about GitOps, I'm happy to talk more, but hopefully it gives you kind of like a view of like what GitOps is, some of the reasons why it is emerging as a powerful practice, and some of the benefits of it. So there's more benefits here. We also have this GitOps topic page, which is really nice. This is kind of like our what is GitOps page for external people. This is like our internal handbook page that has all the notes. I'll touch briefly on the personas that you would encounter. So similarly, on the application side of the house, if you were doing a sale, you'd be looking at like the VP of app dev or some type of engineering manager, engineering director on the application side. The folks that are responsible for infrastructure and operations, those are going to be your GitOps folks. So in terms of the user personas, we're looking here at like your site reliability engineers. Often somebody who has the title DevOps engineer is responsible for infrastructure and environments. More and more, we're seeing the pattern of the platform operator. And I'll show one slide here because we're seeing this more and more and more as a success pattern where teams are structured like this, where you have these kind of microservice-based teams where each of these vertical slices represents a product team, a product, or a service that the dev is responsible for. And embedded within those teams, they have an operations person. They have somebody who's responsible for the uptime and operations of that service, but they're not solely responsible for themselves. We call that person the embedded SRE. So rather than being off at a separate team, they tend to be embedded together with the developers that own that service. And what I've seen really good is there's this Pareto principle 80-20 split where the devs don't just only write code, they're also responsible for operating the service, but maybe an 80-20 split, where the SREs still write some code, maybe 20% and are 80% responsible for the operation of that service. And that's within that layer of the dev team. But then those dev teams, they shouldn't have to worry about things like Kubernetes clusters. Kubernetes is complex and is not built for developers. And you really don't want to have to teach all of your developers about Kubernetes. You want them to have to know as little as possible about Kubernetes to be successful. And this is where the operations platform team is emerging, where these teams are building essentially internal platform as a services that they serve out to their dev teams. These are often built on top of Kubernetes. This idea is that the platform ops team, they own the clusters. They're responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance of those clusters. And then the developer teams, they offer that platform to them as a service, usually with some pipelines that allow them to deploy into Kubernetes. I'm sure you can already see where GitLab is a very powerful tool for this use case because we have such great version control, because we have such great CI/CD. And then optionally, sometimes there's even a separate infrastructure team. So this is where you might have like a database administrator in the infrastructure team, or this is where the people who are responsible for the actual virtual machines and the nodes or the actual physical infrastructure is sometimes a separate team. Sometimes the platform operations team owns not only the cluster, but also the infrastructure as well. So that's kind of the user personas. In terms of the buyer personas, we're looking at all of your I&O, infrastructure and operations personas, folks like the CIO or VP of IT. If anybody who's a director, VP that has infrastructure in their title, this is someone where we can tell them about the benefits of our infrastructure as code and GitOps, powerful parts of GitLab. And especially this one right here, if they are doing platform engineering, if they have a platform operations team, that is ripe for, hey, you want to do some GitOps, and we have a lot of powerful capabilities, things like our Kubernetes integration, things like our Terraform integration. We're building up more and more features that integrate with Terraform. We partner with all of these other tools, and so that's a really strong part of our story, where with other use cases, like let's say CI/CD, the story might be, well, GitLab is the one thing and you do it all. With GitOps, our partner story is a really powerful part of that story. So the fact that we partner with HashiCorp, the fact that we partner with Red Hat, the fact that we partner with Weaveworks, all these other companies that we're working together with them, that's a powerful part of our story, because there are some features that GitLab's never going to build. Like for example, GitLab is never going to build an infrastructure configuration manager for virtual machines, something like a Chef or a Puppet or an Ansible. GitLab's not going to build that tool. If you're doing everything containerized, if everything is in a container, maybe you don't even need that tool, right? You just have your cluster connected to GitLab, and GitLab has your cluster connection, GitLab has your container registry, GitLab has your CI/CD, it's all in GitLab. But if you're using a tool like Terraform, GitLab's not going to replace Terraform. If you're using a tool like Ansible, GitLab's not going to replace Ansible. So instead, we're going to partner with those companies. We're going to build strong integrations, and we already have some, for example, for tools like Terraform. I just want a quick. We're doing pretty solid on time here. Also on this page, so personas are on this page. These are some of the market requirements. So you may be familiar from other use cases where we say, what's your customer, what's the problems that they're going to have that we're going to help them solve, right? One of the problems is they're going to need to foster collaboration. And this is a really good way. I should have brought this in earlier, but a great way to think about the benefits that GitLab offers for GitOps is it's a combination of the benefits of our version control and collaboration, and the benefits of our CI, the benefits of our CD, and the benefits of our partner integrations, which I just talked about, right? So all of those together are the GitOps benefits. Because, for example, if their use case is version control, for application code, we have all these version control benefits, things like our amazing, code review process and the ability you can comment on each line, you can apply suggestions, and we have these really nice workflows for doing code review. Well, all of those same code review for your application development teams is the same type of collaboration benefits that your infrastructure and operations teams are going to benefit from. The modern types of I know. So traditional IT ops is not going to be using these tools, right? Traditional IT ops is a different story, but the modern, what I call modern I&O, these are folks like site reliability engineers, DevOps engineers, platform operations engineers. They want to collaborate in code. We have great code collaboration tools, right? Same thing for, like, for example, test automation. You want to do test automation for your application code? We've got great CI. You want to do test automation for your infrastructure or your environments? We've got great CI, right? So as you're thinking about selling this use case into folks that have infrastructure in their title, and helping to share with them why this is beneficial for them, or how we can help them out and make them successful, it's a lot of the same benefits and a lot of the same language we would share with the app dev folks, right? So all the benefits of version control, we would share with the app dev folks. For the I&O folks, we would say, hey, if you're doing infrastructure as code, we have all these version control benefits, etc. There are a lot of customers already doing this. Even though, like I said, GitOps is a pretty new thing. Infrastructure as code has been around for at least a decade. And so we have folks that are already doing this. Folks like Kiwi, folks like, this is a cool video from VMware, who's another one of our partners. They did this talk at GitLab Commit about how to do, infrastructure as code. There's one that I'm looking for, Northwestern Mutual. Here's a really cool video about how Northwestern Mutual is using GitLab together with Terraform, right? So customers like Northwestern Mutual, WAG Labs, we have another list of them here. These are folks that are doing this today. They're any of our customers that are using Terraform together with GitLab, that's for the most part, they're doing GitOps, and we have many of them, and you can share their stories of how they've been successful using GitLab. Last thing, this resources section here on the go-to-market page. This is where the slide deck and the video that you can actually see this slide deck. I did a video where I present the whole thing. So it's about 40 minutes if you want to kind of in-depth, like, see this entire deck presented. That video is linked here. The pages are linked here. We have a lot of other great videos. What's really cool, what makes me excited about GitOps is that within our company, we have a lot of SMEs, which I forget what that stands for, subject matter expert. So we have many subject matter experts. A lot of folks in our solution architect, our TAMs, even Brad Downey is in the sales org and holding his own as a technical expert as well. So some of these blogs and videos are from him. Mayank, who's one of our alliances folks. So we have a lot of folks that are really subject matter experts on this, and they're all contributing content. And we have a lot of content already, even though we've just started this go-to-market motion. We've just launched a campaign around GitOps, where we're doing, these webinars like we did yesterday, and ads and landing pages and these kinds of things to generate leads. We already have a good bit of content that I'm excited about. So with that, it looks like we have 9 or 10 minutes left. I would love to just stop the share and open it up to any questions that anyone has about GitOps or about your customers using GitOps, infrastructure, any of these things.
Looks like we have our first question from Cherry, if you'd like to vocalize that.
Yes, you know, a lot of banks or financial insurance companies are very interested in GitOps. So I always share, we do have the project and the blog. It's great. Now it's, you know, with a handbook with more information and the use cases. But especially with banks, the moment we go into IAC infrastructure as a code, because they can manage through merge requests, all that stuff, and the automation. Then they say it's a configuration as a code as well. So we have to show Terraform provider. So is this effort include configuration as code, or is they in the scope of infrastructure portion? I know our demo project, it's great. Jeff built the whole infrastructure as a code and the configuration as a code. So I'm using that as a reference point right now. Just curious, the scope of work include that as well. This bank specific asked for that because they want to provide audit trail. It's a compliant environment, so everything has to be tracked and versioned.
Yeah, excellent question. I'm really happy you brought that up. Both the question and your note to compliance. So what I like to talk about is sometimes I'll say X as code, because infrastructure, configuration, policy, operations as code, security as code, any of those infrastructure and operations concerns, we're calling that GitOps, right? So yes, absolutely configuration is code, absolutely policy is code. All of those things that are the concern of the site reliability engineer or the platform engineer, the DevOps engineer, all of those tools that they would work on that are not necessarily the concern of the software developer, the feature development, right? So these are two different parts of the organization, but they can both benefit from GitLab. And what you have just nailed there is like what they're looking for is these security and compliance benefits. And this is the one that I hear over and over and over again, that, you know, if you're trying to do your auditing and your infrastructure and configuration and network and all of that is provisioned via clicking on these manual buttons, well, then you have to document it somewhere. You then have to read that documentation. What state is it in? We don't know. And when I go to audit, I now have to go and pull data out of these multiple places to try to figure out what's going on and am I compliant? But if every change to your policy and every change to your infrastructure and if all of these changes are all tracked in one Git log, and all I can do is just look at the Git history and there's my audit log. It's very, very powerful. So this is highly motivational for, you know, any kind of regulated industry, public sector, financial services, anybody who is, you know, even just larger enterprises that just are concerned with compliance. This is a powerful model.
Yeah, thanks for that. Do you happen to know we are working with HashiCorp to productize Terraform provider? Because it's not built by us, not built by them. I heard it was built by F5.
That is an excellent question. I don't know the answer, but I want
we can follow up. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to make a note of that because that, yeah, I know there's a GitLab Terraform provider. I am not up to speed on what the current state of the plan for that is. I do know, for example, that some of the features in GitLab, for example, we have released the ability to store Terraform state within GitLab as your storage mechanism. So without this feature, if you're using GitLab and you're using Terraform, then that Terraform state file, you need to store that somewhere. So now all of a sudden you need a separate place to go and store that. So GitLab has a nice tightly integrated feature where you can just store that state file and it'll even show up in your merge request and be able to parse it, that kind of feature. And we have more capabilities coming that will be more tightly integrated with Terraform. And I will need to follow up on, unless anyone on the call is more up to speed on that, on the state of the Terraform provider.
It just, I have a Go trial customer I'm working with right now, a bank. Specific with that, I got help from Kelly and a few other folks. We can follow up because I know we're running out of time. There are more questions.
Yeah, And I will mention here the call to action that John and I discussed. Everyone on this call, what are we asking of you? So mostly I'm just sharing with you and hopefully sharing information that's helpful to you. But I do have an ask of you. And that is, if you are doing discovery with any customers, if you're doing discovery with folks like this on the infrastructure and operations side, and you're doing a discovery call with GitOps, I personally would love to join that call. Please do invite me in, because having these conversations and hearing from these customers is how I can understand the market more. And or if you have these conversations and they're recorded in chorus. So if you have chorus conversations, if you say like, hey, I was on a call with a customer the other day and we talked about GitOps, or we talked about, infrastructure as code, please do send me the chorus link. And I know some of you have already done that. I got a good one from Tim. So that's my ask of you, is that I would love to join your discovery calls to talk to your customers and prospects about GitOps, and/or I would love to review those calls in chorus after the fact. So do we have time for another question, John?
We've got 3 minutes left. Next question is from Hayden, and it's a doozy. We might be able to get through the first part of it.
Actually, thanks, John. I was looking at the page for GitOps, William. It looks like you've started down underneath the GitLab solution, where you've got discovery questions, competitive comparison, etc. The message house bit there. So no need to tackle this one now, but I think in terms of the use cases, it might be good to follow the command of the message framework, as in, hey, what's your status now? What are the negative consequences? What happens if you don't do anything? What would you like things to look like? What are the outcomes you're looking for? I think that'd be handy for all the use cases.
Totally agree. And I will say this as well. This use case is much more of a work in progress than other use cases. So some of our other use cases, we've developed the whole thing and it's all pretty tightly baked. And then we've gone and enabled the sales team on it. With GitOps, we're in the middle of it. And there's a couple reasons why I said it's just time to, let's go ahead and share what we've got. One is, it's part of our GitLab culture, right? Everything's always in draft. So it's never ever going to be fully baked. So I wanted to share with you what I had. Felt there was something meaningful there today, even though there's a lot more coming. And also, we've already started our marketing campaigns. So with other use cases, we've developed the entire use case and then we run a marketing campaign on it. With GitOps, we said we really didn't want to wait. We felt like there's a market need to go and address, and we already started the campaign. So we're already in the middle of this. So you can kind of see some of the planning work is the carts before the horse on that one. So you'll even see parts of this page are not yet filled out. So there's more work coming, and Aiden, that's a phenomenal suggestion to mesh those things with the command of the message, and I totally agree.
It might be a little harder too, if GitOps is an industry-leading concept and we're going to hop into that leadership, it might be harder to say where are you with it if they don't know what it is in the first place. So that could be a little bit, or maybe some of the disconnect there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's why I say, yeah, your customers, they're almost certainly not going to use a term like GitOps. If they're very, very up on the latest cloud native Kubernetes, they're very, very sophisticated, they probably will say, hey, we're doing GitOps, and can you talk to us about GitOps? Everybody else, they're going to be using terms like infrastructure as code. They're going to be talking about Terraform. If they say Terraform or CloudFormation, those are keywords to key you into this. And it looks like we're just up on time. If there are other questions, I'll address them async in the sales channel, or wherever John tells me is a good place to go put those. And would certainly love to continue this conversation. Please, I'd love to join your calls and ask any other further questions. We can keep the conversation going.
Thank you, William. Thank you, team.
Thanks, William.